Snipes and Insights. It's Friday, June 14th. Game 4 recap from last night. It's myself. It's Tyler Madarasz. We had some technical difficulties yesterday with our good friend Google Cloud being down. Basically, nothing worked yesterday, so we couldn't get out preview. So instead, today, what we're going to do, we're going to do a Game 4 recap and then a Game 5 preview. How's that sound, Tyler?
Yeah, it sounds great. We were pretty pumped up to preview the game, and then all of a sudden the game happens. There's no preview. It's fine, but I didn't think anything could top game two. Obviously, game three was a bit of a blow, but like last night just exceeded all of our expectations, and now we got a best of three series.
We do. And, game 3 was pretty ugly. The Florida Panthers took that one 6-1. There were 8 minor penalties in the first period, not a lot of 5-on-5 time. It got ugly in the third period. You had line brawls. You had Jake Wallman squirting Boosh and the rest of the Florida Panthers bench with water. He got hit with a double fine, obviously. So the Edmonton Oilers also, last night, you thought, early on, you're like, fuck. Maybe this is exactly what the series is going to be because the Florida Panthers went up 3-0 in the first period, and you thought, man, this game is probably over. We had Stuart Skinner getting pulled at the end of one, even though he honestly played really, really well. He was probably the Oilers' best player. They faced 17 shots. He saved 14 of them. He had, 2.87 expected goals against, so basically saved what he should have. So from that perspective, he was fine. But then, man, the Edmonton Oilers, they came back hard in the second period.
Yeah, I actually still can't even fathom what went on in that first period and then the second period because the entire hockey world, myself included, thought the Oilers were absolutely cooked after 20 minutes. And you mentioned it, Skinner was good. It's just his team taking penalties again in the first period. Like Evander Kane took that high sticking penalty early on in the game. Then they take another one to put them down on a 5-on-3. Tkachuk scores, he scores again. Then they took another high sticking penalty. I saw after the game, Keith, they have like 13 high sticking penalties in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far. That's just careless use of your stick. And I know a lot of fans are complaining, but a high stick is a high stick, and they just took way too many penalties. And then I think Chris Knobloch and Stuart Skinner, I think it was Calvin Pickard said after the game, he's like, I didn't find out until 3 minutes left in the first intermission that I was going in. So that just tells me that Chris Knobloch and his coaching staff probably had a bit of a discussion because what is it, 17, 18 minutes for an intermission? They must have thought about this for like 15 minutes and we're like, all right, we just got to pull Skinner, got to get the boys going. And then Pickard came in. He was great. His team scores him 3 goals. And then we get a great third period too, right? Like Wallman scoring, not doing the gritty. He didn't win it in overtime. So we didn't see it gritty. And then obviously the late tying goal, like we've already seen Corey Perry do, and it was Sam Reinhart this time around. And then overtime, like how many chances back and forth. Unbelievable game. I honestly didn't think anything could top game 2. I thought that after game 1 and then after game 2 and now after game 4, you're like, where is this series going to go now?
We're totally in one now, which is awesome to see. This Stanley Cup Final is exceeding our expectations. It's the best Stanley Cup Final in recent memory so far through 4 games, right? The series is tied 2-2. We've had 3 overtime games, comebacks left and right. One outlier of a game, but even still, like, kind of exciting just to see, like, the Florida Panthers kind of whoop that ass a little bit. And then now, I mean, Edmonton coming back from 3-0, going into this game, teams that were down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Final were 0-37. The Edmonton Oilers are the first team to ever come back from 3 goals down in the Stanley Cup Final and win. So that in itself is just super impressive. Connor McDavid, they actually said at the end of the first period that it was Corey Perry who stood up and said something in the locker room. And Leon Draisaitl says, when Corey Perry says something, you listen. And so he seemed to be the guy to kind of rally the troops. We saw the big viral video last year, Connor McDavid saying it wasn't good enough, So it seems like Corey Perry took that on last night. But, what needed to be done, Leon Draisaitl, he has, I think, 10 overtime goals this year between playoffs and regular season out of their 91 games or something like that. So Leon Draisaitl also he's scoring these ridiculous like timed goals when it matters. Seth, can we get the overtime winner up here? Even though it wasn't like a clean shot, right? It goes off Mikkola and then through Bob's 5-hole. Like it just, the fact that the puck's on his stick and he's getting it towards the net, that's all you have to do in those times.
No, for sure. Just throw pucks on net and just hope that they go in. And you see Draisaitl there, not even celebrating, but just one-handing it on net. And Mikkola had a pretty rough game, Keith. This was his third minus of the night, so he ended up being a -3, which you never want to see on the score sheet. And you got to give Podkolzin a lot of credit, right? He had that like little backhand shovel earlier in the game. I think that tied the game at 3 in that second period. And then on this play, he gets the puck at the blue line. To me, it looked like he was trying to feed Corey Perry, who was cutting down the middle of the ice, but it kind of hopped over Perry's stick, which worked out perfectly for Podkolzin. And then Draisaitl just does the rest. But like you'll see it here, Podkolzin trying to give it to Perry. He either had it hop over his stick or just let it go to Draisaitl. Either way, Leon Draisaitl picks up the puck, does the rest, bit of a lucky bounce, and gets to celebrate with his teammates, and just has another overtime goal in the Stanley Cup Final. Like, ridiculous what he did in Game 1, scoring a couple goals, including the OT winner, and now scoring another OT winner to even the series up heading back to Edmonton.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like, this is exactly what you want. You knew when these teams were rematching each other, you had all the expectations and the hopes that it would become a classic, but you never really know. And then after Game 3, I was kind of down. I was like, damn, if the Florida Panthers kind of have this, and even after the first period last night, I really was like, damn, like this series is over. Florida's done. If you want to take a look at our friends at CoolBet too, so I was looking at the odds last night. The Edmonton Oilers money line got as high as plus 950. So you put a $10 wager at the end of the first intermission, you would have won $95 on your bet had you taken the Edmonton Oilers. So that is something that I think is interesting for CoolBet, but also for us. Like, just this is how little expectation Edmonton had to win at that point in the game. That evens out to like a 9% win probability. I'm sure Florida has really never given up a 3-goal lead like that. And to me too, like, I wouldn't necessarily say they took their foot off the gas like they have it in recent kind of memory. So sometimes when they're up in a lead, they kind of pull back defensively. They don't really attack offensively. But if you look in shots on goal from the second period through the end of overtime, Edmonton only had a 5-shot advantage, 23-28. So Florida, I didn't think they played a bad game. I just think, some opportunities for Edmonton. They wanted it more and they got that win.
Yeah, and like the Oilers in the first period, who took 3 minor penalties, the Panthers kind of started that period and took a penalty. It obviously turned into the Ryan Nugent-Hopkins goal, which got the Oilers going. You kind of saw a bench shot of them being like, all right, like, we got life. We have a power play of our own. We scored a goal. And then all of a sudden they score another one on that ridiculous shot by Darnell Nurse. And then Podkolzin ends up tying things. And I don't know who would have bet that either, Keith, because like you watching it as well, we were both like, this game is done. It's 3-0 Panthers at home in Florida. There's no chance the Oilers come back, and then they do. So I hope people did bet that at like plus 950, which is pretty crazy. Maybe some Oilers fans dropped a couple bucks on it and made a little money, and now they're pumped with a 3-game series ahead, with the next game coming up in Edmonton tomorrow.
Yeah, let's go back to that first period too for a second, because that was domination from the Florida Panthers, right? They were plus 24 advantage in shot attempts. The actual shots on goal were 17-7. They obviously had a bunch of power plays, so special team time is going to play a factor in that. And like you mentioned, Matthew Tkachuk finally getting on the score sheet, had 2 big power play goals. He's a guy who looks like he might be back a little bit. I was peeking at his CoolBet Conn Smythe odds. He's all the way up now to plus 1,500. He was like plus 3,000 before yesterday's game. So those 2 goals definitely helped him too. But also too, like Stuart Skinner, he faced 2.87 expected goals against. That is a ton of shot quality in one period to face. And none of the goals I didn't really think were his fault. But at the same time, when Calvin Pickard came in the second, third, and overtime, he played absolutely unreal. He saved 22 of 23 shots. Obviously, the only goal he let up was that Sam Reinhart goal to tie it with like 19 seconds left in regulation, which was honestly pretty sick for the hype of the game. But he had a full goal saved above expected. So he's coming into the game where Stuart Skinner at that point had minus 0.13. Goals saved above expected. So Calvin Pick. Right, Tyler?
Yeah, sorry, you froze a little there, but I don't even think we're going to see Stuart Skinner come back at all into this series after what Pickard did. Like, in a sense, great. His team scored him 3 goals. Like, maybe if his team doesn't do that and he just comes in and still shuts the door on the Panthers and maybe they win like 4-1 or something like that, the conversation could be a little different. But like, I don't know if we're seeing number 74 back in between the pipes. And people were saying after the game, like, watched Calvin Pickard with the NHL on TNT panel. He just seems like such a confident guy. Like, nothing really phases him. But when you're just looking at the next game, like, if Pickard plays well, people were already saying, like, maybe he's going to win the Conn Smythe. Like, you never know. Like, it's not just the Stanley Cup Final. It's an accumulation of the entire Stanley Cup playoffs. And he obviously had to come in the first round, and then he's out. And when he gets injured, and then he's back in now. Like, if in this best of 3 now in the Cup final, if Calvin Pickard takes the Edmonton Oilers to winning a Stanley Cup, like maybe he's the Conn Smythe winner. So just crazy how the storylines change. It feels like game by game in the Cup final, and we're just pumped that we have a best of 3 now, and Calvin Pickard's just trying to do his best to get the Oilers to their end goal.
Yeah, Seth, if you have that video of the Pickard save on Lundell, like at this point in the game, it was 3-1, and Jake Wallman turns it over in his own D zone, and Lundell has a clean break. Pickard makes a huge timely save. If Florida goes up 4-1 there, like I don't think Edmonton's coming back. Like they got one, so they're again a little momentum, but then Florida quickly turns it around and puts one back in. I think a lot of momentum dies, and I think the game takes a different tone. So that save was obviously huge. But Calvin Pickard, I mean, I think he has to play the next game, right? Nothing against Stuart Skinner. I don't think he's been bad, but Pickard was the guy in this game. And also, like, the team was rejuvenated when he went in. Not to say that Stuart Skinner doesn't do the same, but I think you have to start him in game 5. He's going to be the guy that this moving forward. If he has a bad game 5, you can still go to Stuart Skinner in Florida in game 6. You're now at a point where it's a best of 3, so you don't have to worry about being eliminated next game. I think you go with Stuart Skinner just to start it off.
Yeah, and this is why you have a capable backup. And just to look at the other side, let's just say Sergei Bobrovsky's faltered, and maybe he hasn't played his best couple games of the season. But like getting Vitek Vanacek as your backup, there's probably no trust there for Paul Maurice. So this is why you have a guy like Calvin Pickard who proved it last year. Like he is a good goaltender. And I know he's had a lot of stops throughout his career, but he's kind of found a home here at Edmonton and obviously loves it there. And the fans do love him when he's getting in games and winning them. So this is why you have a capable backup. I don't really want to call it a 1A, 1B because we're barely calling Stuart Skinner at times during the regular season a 1. And we can't really call Calvin Pickard a 1B, but it's working right now. The team's playing well. They're coming back. They're winning games in overtime, and we'll see if Calvin Pickard could do it and then maybe go down to Florida and win a Stanley Cup there.
Yeah, Seth, let's quickly pull up the lines quick just for game 5. We obviously don't know if there's going to be any changes. If anything, I think Edmonton probably stays status quo and Florida maybe makes a change or two. But Pickard and goal is obviously going to be a big thing. One thing that caught my eye as well was, line 2, this Draisaitl, Kapanen, and Kane line. They played pretty well yesterday. Actually, Podkolzin ended up switching with Kane for a while because Kane got demoted after that penalty. So it was mostly Podkolzin, Draisaitl, and Kapanen. And they were the best line for Edmonton yesterday. They had 2 goals at 5-on-5 compared to no goals against. They dominated shot attempts 8-2, and they had a 77% expected goal share. Whereas you look at McDavid's line with Connor Brown and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, they were actually a little outplayed. They only got 31% of the expected goal share. So to me, it was that Draisaitl line that was carrying a lot of the 5-on-5 play for Edmonton yesterday. And I think if you're Chris Knobloch, I think you maybe switched Podkolzin and Kane just because of how good that line was. Nothing against Evander Kane, but when you got something going in the playoffs, you got to ride the hot hand.
Yeah, Podkolzin up there just seems to work, and he works on the 4th line when he's playing with Janmark and whoever else is down there, whether it's Corey Perry or somebody else. Maybe we even see Victor Arvidsson back in for Saturday in game 5. Like maybe Skinner comes back out and Arvidsson goes back in, and like Evander Kane's going to be taking those penalties. There's just no way you can play him in the top 6. And I know he scored a clutch goal in this playoffs already in the Stanley Cup Final. But Evander Kane, like you can't play him with Draisaitl if he's going to be taking penalties like that. And I think on the other side, Paul Maurice might have said today that he doesn't even want to make any changes going into game 5. So this is probably the lineup we'll see. Maybe a D pairing switches here and there, but like Forsling and Ekblad have been great together. I know Mikkola was a -3 playing with Seth Jones, but they've been a solid pairing. And then obviously Schmidt and Kulikov kind of just do their thing pretty low key on the 3rd pairing. So we'll see what the Panthers have in store after giving up a 3-0 lead and losing in overtime. Like they came so close. Both teams came close in overtime before Draisaitl ended it, right? Like the Frederick chance that went off Forsling's skate in the crease, and then obviously Sam Bennett with Pickard getting the glove on it and hitting the crossbar. Like that could have easily hit Pickard's glove and went bar down instead of bar out. So obviously it's a game of inches, and we'll see what the Panthers do to respond coming up tomorrow night in Edmonton.
Yeah, maybe we'll get your guy Balinskis in the lineup here.
Maybe.
We shall see. We shall see on that. But even on the fourth line, right? Like the Panthers have a lot of capable guys. They have Sturm, they have Mackie Samoskevich, they have Jesper Boquist. So they have guys that could definitely come in if he wants to shake up the bottom line there. And then to the flip side for the Oilers, like Troy Stetcher's a guy who came in who you thought was going to maybe have a little bit of an impact. He only ended up getting a little over 4 minutes in the entire game yesterday, where the second lowest defenseman was Jake Wallman, who had 22 plus minutes, and most of their D was at like 30 minutes for Evan Bouchard, obviously 27 for Ekholm. So Stetcher's a guy where, probably Klingberg probably comes back in for Stetcher just because he didn't really play. He clearly wasn't trusted by Knobloch. And then to me, if you're going to make that change and put Arvidsson back in, I actually think maybe it's Kasperi Kapanen that comes out instead of Jeff Skinner, just based on the usage last night. Skinner had about 12 minutes where Kapanen only had 8 minutes. So he was a guy that Jeff Skinner was leaned on a little bit more than Kapanen. I thought Kapanen's had a good playoff since he's entered the lineup last series, but to me, maybe it's just a point where who you trust in this given moment is who you're going to put into the lineup. So I can see that those changes being made.
Yeah, hopefully it's not Kapanen. I still like what he brings with the speed. Like even last night when he had that fumbling puck and he just defers it over to Jake Wallman, who rips a one-timer. And like it's a pretty nice play by him, and even for Wallman to rip home a bouncing puck like that. We'll see who it is. The Stetcher thing, I think for sure he comes out. Like it was that third goal, like in the last minute of the first period, where I think it was Verhaeghe went on the forecheck, just kind of separated Stetcher pretty easily from the puck and fed Lundell in front for that 3-0 goal. So I think at that point, you're kind of like, if you're an Oilers fan, you're just like, should we have brought Troy Stetcher in instead of John Klingberg? Klingberg's played fairly well throughout the postseason. So yeah, I'd expect Klingberg to come back in for Stetcher, even though they did win the game. You don't really see teams make a lot of changes after they do win a game in the playoffs. But yeah, I'd expect Klingberg to come back in on the back end.
And they do have the last change at home in game 5. So that plays a factor. But if you knowingly are going into a game where you're only going to roll with 5 defensemen, that taxes your guys. And that's not something ideally you want to do. You want to be able to roll all 4 lines. You want to be able to roll all 3 D pairs. That was something Chris Knobloch emphasized a couple series ago. He's like, I can trust all the guys. I could play anyone against whoever. And then he kind of didn't do that last night. So I think he's going to want to try and fix that and, roll with guys that he can trust. So I think that's going to we'll see how it plays out. We'll get the lineup information in the morning, but yeah, I'm excited for the game tomorrow. Obviously, Seth, do we also have that Leon Draisaitl graphic? Leon Draisaitl, it's just amazing at what he's been able to do for us in the playoffs. He has 4 overtime goals this year. He has the most overtime goals in a single postseason already. There's still 3 more games left to play, at least 2 more, possibly 3 more. So maybe he gets another overtime goal. His former teammate, Corey Perry, or his current teammate, former Duck Corey Perry's on there with 3 overtime goals in 16-17. Matthew Tkachuk did it 2 years ago in the Panthers' first run. He had 3 overtime goals as well. So 3 guys in this series are top 5 on this, overtime pick here. So to me, I mean, he's like, and his overtime goals, like they're generally like not the greatest goals, but in overtime, it doesn't matter, right? If McDavid's doing a crazy move where he just gets you in a situation where the goalie's not in the net, like you put it in the back of the net, that's great. Yesterday's goal took a deflection, but Leon Draisaitl, just an elite goal scorer in this league, puts the puck in the net and scores timely goals when it matters.
He's just clutch. That's why Leon Draisaitl gets paid a heck of a lot of money. And it was unfortunate last year because we didn't really get the full Leon Draisaitl Stanley Cup Final experience. We got that taken away from us because of whatever injury he was dealing with and clearly didn't look like himself. But I love seeing him up here on the board. Like Leon Draisaitl's a player that obviously every single team would love to have lead their team to a Stanley Cup Final. And luckily for the Oilers, they have McDavid and Draisaitl doing it side by side. And not shocked whatsoever to see Corey Perry on this list. How clutch has he been from pretty much every stop he's been on the NHL? And Matthew Tkachuk, kind of surprising to see that, but like, I think he had that one walk-off OT one that he did. What was that, against Carolina potentially? Boston, where
the game 7
walked off the ice like so casually. So
wait, no, that was Carolina. He did it. So his 3 overtime goals that playoff, it was the Boston game 7 when they came back and won, and then it was games 1 and games 2 against Carolina. He did it back-to-back games.
I think that's why he just decided to walk off. Like Matthew Tkachuk has just way too much swag, but I almost forgot that he had 3 overtime goals. And as you said, like maybe Tkachuk's back in the series, right? He scores 2 goals. They end up losing, but like we'd love to see Matthew Tkachuk back making a difference, and not just physically or getting in guys' faces, but offensively and scoring timely goals for his team. We'll see if he can start it on the road in game 5.
Yeah, and we'll see if we get Taylor Swift in the building for Game 5. I think it's less than likely she travels all the way up to Edmonton, 6 hours to go to that Stanley Cup Final. But it was fun to see her and Travis Kelce. The broadcast obviously wanted to show her as much as possible. They even had a picture of them two talking to Wayne Gretzky at one point. So just fun to see all that good stuff. They had a good amount of celebrities in the building. People were fired up for this game. We want to take a look quick at the cool bet stuff going for us the rest of the way in this series. Game 5 odds for tomorrow night. -115 for the Oilers, -102 for the Panthers. So Florida is a slight underdog on the road. Edmonton slight favorite at home. If you want to take a look at the series odds, it has now shifted. The Edmonton Oilers are now slightly favored to win the series, -114 compared to -104 for Florida. If we want to take a look how it was yesterday, the Edmonton Oilers were +210 to win the series, and the Panthers were -256. So a big shift in those odds. Obviously, that makes sense with how the game played out. And then current Conn Smythe odds, our guy Sam Bennett still number one favorite for the Conn Smythe at +140. We have Draisaitl now, second favorite at +225. McDavid at +255. And then Matthew Tkachuk coming all the way down to +1,500. He was like +3,000 before yesterday's 2-goal game. So it'll be interesting to see there. I think I saw our guy Calvin Pickard is around +10,000. So if you put $10 on Calvin Pickard, you get $1,000 potential return. I think the value is there just because he's undefeated in the playoffs and he's probably going to play the rest of the way out. If he wins the next 2 games and has a shutout in one of those 2 games, it's going to be hard to not pick him to win the Conn Smythe.
Yeah, if the Oilers do win the cup, I'd put him number 2 as we speak right now behind Leon Draisaitl. I know Connor McDavid's still top 2 in points in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but like if Pickard comes in here again in relief for Stuart Skinner and leads them to a Stanley Cup, you'd almost have to give it to him. So I think it's Draisaitl, Pickard right now on that side. And then, yeah, Sam Bennett, for what he's done throughout the entire postseason, he has been an absolute stud leading the playoffs in goals. So I'd go him, Tkachuk right now. And hey, maybe Sergei Bobrovsky, though, locks in a little mini 3-game series right now in the Stanley Cup Final and somehow swoops underneath Tkachuk and Bennett. Like, if we get playoff Bob here, especially starting off in Game 5 tomorrow, maybe Sergei Bobrovsky can kind of sweep in there and maybe pick up a Conn Smythe that the Panthers can go back-to-back.
Yeah, I'm looking now. So right now, Bob is +6,000. Whereas, like for most of the series, he was the favorite on the Panthers until Sam Bennett kind of took over. But games 1 and 2, like Bob was like +300, +400. So he's definitely taken a step back. But again, good value on a guy like that who could also potentially take over the next 2 to 3 games. So we'll see how that all plays out. I'm excited. If you go to puckpedia.com/coolbet, you can get in on the action today and you can get all these fun Conn Smythe game odds, series odds, everything you could want. Stay cool and bet responsibly on CoolBet. Let's wrap up the show with our Puck Doku boards. And Tyler, I finally did it. Keith is on the board here. A devil's square definitely helps the matters, but needless to say, Keith with a 4 uniqueness, Tyler close second with 6, and then Seth rushed at the end because he is in Israel. So stay safe, Seth. But he is currently at a 12 uniqueness. So I won today. If we want to take a look at what intrigued us on the boards here, anytime we could pick our guy Jimmy Hayes on the board, I think it's a great thing we can do. RIP Jimmy Hayes. You had him in the Devils Blackhawks square. He played on both teams for a minute. And then I put him in the Florida Panthers Devils square. So I was surprised. I would have guessed the Panthers Blackhawks would have been a little higher percentage than Devils Blackhawks, but to each their own. That's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. You can't guess the uniqueness. You got to get lucky a little bit. Anytime I could use my guy Ken Klee too. He's the current head coach of the PWHL Minnesota team. He played with the Devils for a hot minute. I think he had a good amount of time with the Capitals, maybe a few years, but I think only a year or 2 with the Devils. Current GM of the San Jose Sharks, Mike Greer, was the one who really screwed me today. He was the only guy that registered on my uniqueness. He had a 4%er there. So Mike Greer, man, people know that you play for Washington and Buffalo, I guess. And then Mike Camilleri is a guy, 200+ assists, played for the Devils for a few years. Devils have a lot of guys that have 200+ assists, so try to go a little abstract there. And you went on Oleg Tverdovsky on your square there, who I absolutely love.
Yeah, I was a big Tverdovsky fan. Like you were, almost forgot I had to check right before the show. He went 2nd overall in his draft year behind Ed Jovanovski, the Jovo Cop. So how about Oleg Tverdovsky? He was randomly the first player I thought of today when I saw Devils and 200 career assists. But on your board, love the Ken Klee pick, also a former Maple Leaf, and as you say, a PWHL champion again this year in Minnesota. So you got to give it to Ken Klee. And then, on mine, I kind of had a theme, if you notice, in my Washington Capitals line. I went with some sturdy defensemen, Matt Irwin, Alex Urbaum, one of your favorite Devils of all time, supposedly, Keith, and then Tyson Strachan, who had a pretty much cup of coffee in the NHL, but did play with Florida and Washington. I had to throw Max Afinogenov in there. He was 1%, but gotta love a little Max Afinogenov, number 61. Lucas Wallmark as well was kind of highly touted and kind of just fell out of the NHL. And then on Seth's board, as you said, he was rushed. Maybe if he wasn't rushed today, he could have beat me. Maybe he went in between us and hit a 5, but was rushed. And Nick Aube-Kubel, the Sabres Washington Capitals score, 4% for NAK. That was a little surprising, but love his Danis Zubers pick. Love his Joey Anderson pick, former Blackhawk, Devil, Maple Leaf. And Brandon Peary. Remember how good Brandon Peary's shot was? We were like, Brandon Peary is going to be a stud, like just a guy that can shoot the puck, kind of like Martin Ferk style, the way he could shoot, but never really worked out for Brandon Peary. So Seth unfortunately comes in last, and got to give you your congrats, Keith, because you deserve this one.
I needed that one. Sometimes I think you just say shit out of your ass with Alex Urban being my favorite Devil, but here we are. But yeah, to Seth's board too. I love that Michael Ryder pick. He came into the Devils when they weren't that great of a team, and he produced pretty well for them in his, I think, probably two or 3 years that he played there. So loving the Michael Ryder pick. You mentioned Joey Anderson too. He's a guy with former first-round draft pick. Didn't really pan out. Kind of was a tweener between the AHL and the NHL, but did get some games with a few different teams. Danis Zubers also played for the Devils and the Capitals a good amount of time, so he was a solid player indeed. The Eric Johnson pick's a quiet one too. Sabre legend, played there, I believe, just 1 season, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 200 plus assists, though. He's had a hell of a career. Was he a former first overall pick?
He was a first overall pick for the Blues a while back. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was 2006 draft. So good on Eric Johnson. I'm pretty sure he just announced his retirement a couple months ago. So wish him the best. But yeah, that's our Puck Doku boards for the day. This wraps up our show. We are very excited for game number 5 on Saturday night, 8 p.m. on TNT and Sportsnet. And again, if you want to go get in on the action, go to puckpedia.com/coolbet today to play some fun wagers for the Stanley Cup Final and any other sports of your liking. That's all the time we have here, folks. Everyone have a good weekend.